The time is at hand.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
One of the many spirits said to haunt the area.
Unknown animal attack.
We need a great reset.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
From 659 feet, way up in the Appalachian Mountains. This is In Dark Places. My name is Jimbo Fugit. How's your drive time commute? Recently started having to drive an hour away to go to work. At times, see, they're tearing my store down, gonna completely gut it and remodel it and everything like that. And I'm now working at a different store for like 5 or 6 months. So all kinds of adventures from his store. Don't mind the driving, because I can catch up on all my shows and stuff. But the people I work with are kind of nuts. This is a story sent in by our friend Paul, executive in charge. Thanks, Paul. Locals baffled as alien-like sea creature with spiked tail found on UK beach, by Katie Weston and Rachel Haynes. Thanks, Katie and Rachel. A mysterious sea creature with a spiked tail washed up dead on a beach. Marilyn Inglis, 72, came across the alien-like animal while taking a stroll on the sand in Littlehampton, West Sussex. She has since noted its striking resemblance to another creature sighted along the coast of Dorset. Both animals have a translucent head and at least 2 fins of varying sizes, with a long tail. Each of the bodies are also dark gray in color, but the one found in Sussex appears to have spikes running from its head all the way down its spine. Speaking to the Mirror, Marilyn said, "You don't see many things like that. We just stood there looking at it for a while. It appeared alien-like. I've shown the pictures to loads of people, but no one seemed to know what it could be. Even if it had been eaten a bit, it was still quite big, over 2 feet long. It didn't look bony, but was quite muscly, and didn't look like it had an alligator tail. It's hard to know how long it's been dead for, and whether it had been bloated after being in the water for so long. When I showed it to people who go fishing, no one seemed to have an idea what it was, but they didn't see it in real life, which was more spooky than just seeing the photo." Marilyn, who is from London, was visiting her friend when she made the baffling discovery. She added, "If it had been April Fool's Day, then I would think someone had created it. But it looked too real. If we weren't so nervous, we may have got it up to the beach somehow. But you never know what you're dealing with. I hope someone ended up taking it away and investigating it." The RSPCA was left equally stumped by the creature, saying it was unable to identify it. However, researchers at the Marine Conservation Society believed it could be a species of rayfish. One possible suspect for this creature could be the Tully monster. Tully monsters haunted Earth's oceans 300 million years ago and left behind such bizarre fossils that researchers haven't even agreed on whether these strange creatures had backbones. Now, more than 60 years after the strange creature's discovery in 1958, a new investigation using 3D lasers finds that the Tully monster was likely an invertebrate, but not everyone is convinced. This alien-looking evolutionary oddball, only found in the Mason Creek fossil beds in Illinois, had a soft body, eyes on stalks, and a claw-like appendage coming out of its face. Other aspects of its anatomy, however, are open to interpretation. The latest research, published on April 16th in the Journal of Paleontology, is one of a slew of studies attempting to classify the creature. Most recent Tully monster studies argue that it's either a vertebrate relative of modern cyclostomes, including lampreys and eggfish, whatever those are, in the Chordact group, or an unknown invertebrate. Now researchers in Japan think they've cracked the case with the help of a 3D laser scanner. We believe that the mystery of it being an invertebrate or vertebrate has been solved. First author Tomoyuki Mikami, a doctoral student at the University of Tokyo and a researcher at the National Museum of Nature and Science in Tokyo, said in a statement, "Based on multiple lines of evidence, the vertebrate hypothesis of the Tully monster is untenable." Researchers scanned more than 150 Tully monster fossils to create color-coded 3D maps of the animal's anatomical structures. They also x-rayed one well-preserved proboscis, the claw-like appendage, to examine the creature's teeth. The results suggested that features previously used to argue Tully monsters are near cyclostomes taxonomically, including their teeth and gill pouches, were misinterpreted. The teeth analyzed in the new study had bulging bases, unlike cyclostome teeth, which are thinner at the base. The authors said what appeared to be gills was actually just segmentation in the body. So the Tully monster, I think that guy's on Sesame Street. Have you saw Renfield yet? Probably not. It's turned out to be a pretty big flop at the box office, which is kind of sad. But my goodness, Nicolas Cage, that dude can act. I have plenty of meltdowns for that movie once it comes out on DVD or whatever. But until then, here is your meltdown of the week.
Benear. What about Benear?
Mohammed Benear is dead, Lake. Has been for 22 years.
We interviewed your departmental associates. We're concerned about these mood swings you've been suffering. The unpredictability of behavior.
Benear!
There is a concern that you could become a liability to the agency.
I'm a liability?
Mr. Lake.
I've forgotten more about this agency than you'll ever know. Who put you up to this, huh? Who's got their hand in your pocket now? I've seen a million people like you. A million people. Shame on you. Shame on you.
You've got your radio on, don't you? Turn your radio off. Is this ARP? Yes, it is. Extinguish your radio, please. Yes, turn your radio off.
What is this?
What's your best guess?
Are you Art Bell?
No, I'm Harry. Turn off the radio. West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
I have a new feature for In Dark Places that I just invented. It's called In Dark Places Fun Fact Tidbits. And let me set this up for you. If it wasn't for Facebook memories, I wouldn't have remembered this. So when Art Bell was still on the air, and Heather Wade started doing most of his shows, but he would do one every couple of weeks or so, the Art's fans were getting very, very obstreperous and rude and leaving lots of mean comments to Art. So Heather, the producer and the co-host, I guess, always suggested me to be a guest. And he says, you know what, the content is kind of too scary for the average listener because it was going to be based all on exorcisms, and I gave them clips of the banter back and forth between the priest and the possessed, and it was, I think, a 3 or 4 hour show back then. So, anyway, so Art was getting very upset at all the listeners or people complaining, and this is what he told Heather. F the listeners, get the haunted guy on. So, with about a month's notice, they wanted me to do a whole show strictly on exorcism, which I said, you know, I'm not an expert, but I have a lot of experiences, but, you know, a 4 hour show is kind of a lot. And anyways, so during the show, I was telling people they can contact me through Facebook. So after the show was over, I got this message on Instant Messenger. Okay, this is what the person wrote to me. Now, if there's a 5% chance of this being real, it freaks me out. Hi, I heard from you from midnight in the desert. The reason I messaged you is because you were in my nightmare last night. I have nightmares every night, but last night was different. I had a stranger in my dream, and we were eating at a restaurant. The stranger was my cousin. Supposedly, then my real aunt with mental disorders came, and my dead grandpa sat with me. The stranger, cousin in quotations, of mine went to calm down my sick aunt, who would not look or talk with me just like in real life. Well, the nightmare gets frightening and ends. I went through the day blowing it off. I listened to the show tonight and then thought I'd look at the website your picture is. I looked at your website. Your picture is the stranger in my dream. It gave me extreme chills. I created a Facebook page just to message you this. And I'm sure you see much weirder stuff. I'm sure anyway, but I'll delete this tomorrow anyway. So I saved that screenshot and it came up in my memories. That was just a freaky story that I wanted to share with you fellas. A fun fact tidbit that I pretty much forgot about. But stranger things have happened.
What's your best guess?
Are you Art Bell?
No, I'm Harry. Turn off the radio. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi. Hi. Hello. Who am I calling? Well, now, with regard to who you're calling, you would know more about that than I would. I'm trying to reach Art Bell. Uh-huh.
New feature. Thanks, Jamie. That was fun. The name is suiting. It's a fun fact tidbit. And Art Bell, he was grumpy. He was just constantly yelling at people to turn the radio off. I want to do that one day if we ever get another guest. I want to yell at them and tell them to turn the radio off. Eggs rained down from a clear sky on a school called Keep Hatch. One Bertha Tugwell makes a career as a midwife. Is there a weird sense of humor in the order of things? Lynn Picnic investigates. Thanks, Lynn. One wintry morning in 1979, Carol Allspaw of Grand Rapids, Michigan, was stopped short by the sight of a large icicle at her kitchen window. It was the exact shape of a human hand, held awkwardly as if injured. That very day, Miss Allspaw's sister was to have an operation on her hand, and not unnaturally, the icicle seemed like some kind of omen. Later in the day, the surgeons found they could not operate at all because of a new injury to the sister's arm caused by a falling icicle. Reactions to such a story vary depending on the personality and the experience of the reader. Some would put the apparent shape of the icicle on that day, of all days, down to heightened imagination caused by worry over the imminent surgery. Others may believe the story but prefer to shrug it off as mere coincidence. A 1 in a million chance happening. a freak. But there are those whose experiences of the bizarre patterns of coincidence have led them to conclude that there is an intelligence behind such events. Because many of the stranger happenings are unpleasant or seem in some way to mock us deliberately, this directing force has been called the cosmic joker, and he is more active than most people think. His pranks vary in intensity. For example, the disaster related by Stephen Powell in his book of Heroic Failures, the Royal Society of Prevention of Accidents held an exhibit in Harrogate in 1968. The entire display fell down. Stephen Powell also tells the story of a shoplifter who was plying his trade in a store in Barnsley, Yorkshire. He had hardly started when he was seized by 8 pairs of hands. The shop was holding a meeting for store detectives. Such coincidences can only be the work of a bored cosmic joker. Another example is the case of the rain of eggs on a school at Workingham, Berkshire, on several days in early December 1974. The eggs falling out of the proverbial clear blue sky bombarded cars, fences, roof, and playgrounds. They made such a noise as they splattered that it was assumed they must have fallen from a very great height, from an airplane, for example. The local aviation authorities denied all knowledge of what were fictitiously called UFOs, unidentified flying omelets. But the joke was that the school's name was Keep Hatch. Throughout the course of human history, many strange rains have fallen on perplexed humanity. The greatest collector of oddities, the American Charles Hoy Fort, spent most of his life researching such stories and listed fish falls, frogs, strips of human flesh and hair, stones, Chinese crab seals, ice, insects, and many other unlikely types of precipitation. Fort gleefully recorded all the events that defied rationality. He loved perfect coincidences and incidents that caused controversy to rage among learned scientists. He occasionally threw in a wild, provocative speculation on the nature of our relationship with the cosmic joker. Perhaps, he mused, we are someone's property to be fished for. Or perhaps the surface of our planet is a kind of refuse for the joker to litter with rubbish. He saw a childish, often cruel, hand behind some of the pranks, but then children are often cruel. The New York Herald of November 26, 1911 tells the story of a murderer, Sir Edmundbury Godfrey, had been savagely done to death at a place called Greenberry Hill. The 3 men convicted of the crime and subsequently hanged were called Green, Berry, and Hill, with some cosmic child showing his teacher how well he could pun. And does the same mischievous youngster have a hand in shaping the careers of people with appropriate names, such as Bertha Tugwell, the midwife, Don Triplet, the obstetrician who delivered 3 sets of triplets, the medical partnership of Payne and Kilmore, and many more. But the Joker often indulges in sick humor. In their Phenomena, a Book of Wonders, John Michel and Robert Rickard tell of 2 such examples. A baby fell 14 stories in Detroit to fall on Joseph Figlock, passing below. A year later it happened to him again. They survived, but some coincidences are deadly. 2 brothers in Bermuda were killed by the same taxi and driver, carrying the same passenger, while riding the same moped in the same street, but exactly a year apart. We all know of tragic individuals, or even whole families, such as the famous American political family, the Kennedys, whose lives have been bedeviled by all manner of appalling misfortunes. For centuries, being bedeviled by ill luck was a literal expression. It was the devil himself who was behind the tragedies. He seduced witches, emboldening them with false promises of protection, only to leave them to face the rack and the stake alone. In the guise of Pan, he played other mischievous tricks, turning milk sour, attacking young women, making animals barren, and sinking ships. Many serious researchers into the paranormal are convinced, in each age, the cosmic prankster takes the form currently expected of him, the devil or the fairy king. In medieval days, spirits in seance parlors, or men in black today. All too often, the creatures that emerge from UFOs bring only terror and personal ruin, despite messages of peace and love to their witnesses. Very often, the contactees seem deliberately chosen for their respectable standing in the local community. They are set up to be knocked down. Sometimes, the witnesses are given prophecies that come true in the short term and even attract a cult following. But come the day of the crucial, the end of the world, or mass landing of UFOs on the White House lawn, and the joke is very much on the contactee. These days, we do not burn our failed prophets at the stake, but retribution can still be uncomfortable. A respected scientist, James McDonald, who witnessed a UFO landing, felt compelled to make his experience public. After all, he was telling the truth, so what had he to fear? But later, he happened to stand up at a scientific conference to disagree on some academic point with the speaker. A colleague then jumped to his feet and, addressing the entire conference hall, asked how they could believe anything said by a man who claimed to have seen a UFO. Laughter and ridicule greeted this taunt, and McDonald, hitherto as sane as any man, went home and shot himself. So the story goes, as a result. Morris K. Jessup was another well-known scientist whose involvement with ufology led to his academic ruin, social ridicule, and his supposed suicide in strange circumstances. Those connected with him also encountered disaster. UFO researcher Stephen Yankee, who was congratulating himself on having acquired the rare and strange Varro papers, a document by Jessup on microfilm, when his house went up in flames. Coincidence? Cosmic joke? John Keel, whose revolutionary book, UFOs Operation Trojan Horse, was one of the first bestsellers to posit the idea of UFO hoaxers, believes them to have terrestrial origins. He saw the entities as elementals capable of taking any form, who are natural mimics and the enemy of man. It is they who have in the past masqueraded as angels, demons, fairies, and spirits of departed loved ones, and it is they who exploit the UFO obsession of the late 20th century to tease and even destroy modern man, once they lured travelers to their doom by calling them in the voice of loved ones across the dangerous marshes. Today, they seek new and up-to-date ways of tormenting us. At the beginning of the 20th century, the spiritualist movement, then in its heyday, gave the jokesters opportunities for tremendous fun. A spirit purporting to be the dead father of a German lady at a London seance no longer spoke German. Apparently it was not the vogue in the afterlife. To many, this is a clear example of fraud by the medium. But could it have been a malicious joke perpetrated by an elemental in order to mock the medium's integrity? Another case that seems designed to destroy a medium's credibility was that of Katie King, the spirit who materialized through the agency of Florence Cook, whose patron was the distinguished physicist Sir William Crookes. The few surviving photographs of Katie show an extreme likeness to Miss Cook. In fact, it seems pathetically obvious that Katie was none other than the medium, dressed up in suitable shroud-like garments. Yet we have it on the authority of Sir William Crookes and other reputable members of the society that Katie had a dark, rough complexion and Florence was fair-skinned, that Florence had pierced ears and Katie did not, that Katie was taller, and that she had noticeably longer, thinner fingers. In fact, they swore that they saw the two women together on March 29, 1874, and that they had all previously noted these differences between them. This could be explained as the fairly simple-minded conspiracy among witnesses, or it could be deception by Florence Cook. Very few modern researchers who glance at the Katie Florence photographs feel anything but contempt for poor duped Sir William and his friends. The distinguished scientist is made to look a fool. Who was the joker here, Florence King or a cosmic prankster? A curious spiritualist phenomenon of the 1960s, which was apparently restricted to just one medium, Bernie Flint, was that of direct voice tapes. These were allegedly recordings of the voices of the dead, most of them famous, who utilized a voice box formed from ectoplasm produced by the medium. While in most respects plausible enough, why do speakers show remarkable ignorance about the subjects in which they have been experts in life? Amy Johnson, for example, while sounding uncannily like her voice as featured on newsreels of the 1920s, knows nothing about aviation. Oscar Wilde's only witticisms come from his plays, and Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, pioneer of women's medicine, has no more detailed advice to give on health matters than not to overdo things. The direct voice sittings were rigorously investigated for evidence of ventriloquism or hidden recordings, and were cleared on both counts. Here is another phenomenon that points toward the activities of the versatile elemental, posturing to mislead and dishearten honest people. Watching vigilantly for whom he may discredit, the joker arranges for the most credible witnesses, pillars of the community, to catch a glimpse of the Loch Ness Monster. They grab their camera and take several shots, but the camera jams, and the pictures do not come out. And the pictures that do come out are ambiguous, are lost, or look so absurdly faked that the witness loses his credibility altogether. The Loch Ness Monster also gave the cosmic punter a chance to shine when the British naturalist Sir Peter Scott sought to give Nessie zoological respectability by bestowing on it the Latin name Necessitris rhombopetrix, only to have it pointed out that this is a perfect anagram for Monster Hoax by Sir Peter S. Tireless as he is in causing human discomfiture, the Joker occasionally allows us to enjoy the benefit of his perfect timing. Robert Ricard and John Michel give a short list in Phenomena, a Book of Wonders, April 22, 1949. Reports that Dr. A.D. Babcock, an etiologist, I don't know what that is, was bombarded with fish from the sky shortly after breakfast in Biloxi, Mississippi. Dr. W. M. Krogman, a pathologist who specialized in fire deaths, happened to be on holiday nearby on the night Mrs. Reeser spontaneously combusted. And on April 2nd, 1973, a meteorologist strolling in Manchester, England, was nearly brained by a block of ice that fell to shatter at his feet. According to the Meteorological Magazine, September 1975, it was one of the best documented falls of ice on record. The meteorologist broke off part of the ice, conducted extensive tests on it, but its origin remains a mystery. Was it mere chance that the ice block landed at the feet of someone qualified to examine it scientifically? Perhaps not. Perhaps we are toyed with for the amusement of the cosmic joker. Sometimes to our advantage, sometimes not. Charles Fort mused on the possible overall effects of each apparently insignificant accident. Not a bottle of ketchup can fall from a tenement house fire escape in Harlem without affecting the price of pajamas in Jersey City, the temperament of somebody's mother-in-law in Greenland, or the demand in China for rhinoceros horn. The world is a far stranger place than the rationalists would have us to believe, despite its neat physical laws. The law of gravity keeps our feet on the ground, but levitation defies it. Only rain, snow, and the unattractive evidence of birds in flight should fall from the sky. Yet eggs inexplicably showered down on an appropriately named school. Life is supposed to be rational, and yet, confronted with the evidence, it is hard not to believe in the great hoaxer.
When you're big enough to go out to the park, you need a diaper that'll last till dark. You need dryness to spare, you need Pampers.
Introducing Pampers' new maximum absorbency toddler size.
When you're big enough to go fishing with the men, it'll take all morning till you reel 'em in. You need dryness to spare, you need Pampers.
A new, bigger Pampers. Pampers' new maximum absorbency toddler size. Look, if your baby's an average wetter, or a heavy wetter, or even an extra heavy wetter, this new Pampers is so absorbent, it's got dryness to spare. Pampers' new maximum absorbency toddler size. So absorbent, it's got dryness to spare.
When you're big enough to join the pack, it could take a while till you make it back. You need dryness to spare. You need Pampers.
The frequency of hilarious coincidences leads supernaturally to the idea that they are perpetrated by a cosmic pranker. But as Bob Ricard suggests, cosmic jokes may go beyond humor. As Zen Buddhism teaches, laughter and enlightenment are very close. Thanks, Bob. Few of us have not felt at times that our lives are manipulated by forces beyond our control and comprehension, especially when the most trivial events can take on a mysterious significance of their own. Consider the case of Essex policeman Peter Moscardi. In 1967, the telephone number of his police station was changed to 40116. To a friend, he inadvertently gave the wrong number, 40166. Several days later, patrolling an industrial area with a colleague, he investigated a factory. It was late at night. The door was open, and a light was burned inside, but the building was empty. While Moscardi was in the office, the telephone rang. It was his friend. Moscardi looked down at the telephone and found that the number was the one that he had mistakenly given his friend. Later they learned that the manager had forgotten to lock up the factory, something that had never happened before. When faced with incidents of such staggering improbability, and most of us can cite similar personal experiences, the word coincidence seems feeble and dismissive. It explains nothing. We cling to such vague but useful notions as good or bad luck, but perhaps it had been conjectured, and the idea is put forward only half in jest. These weird events are engineered by a mysterious cosmic joker, a sort of demented fairy godmother whose wand is a fool's slapstick. In the capricious and perverse world of the cosmic joker, there are many varieties of prank. Perhaps the most spectacular of these are coincidences, especially those of name and number. The German psychologist Wilhelm Steckel spoke in 1911 of the compulsion of the name. We all know of examples. Here is one from the Daily Telegraph of June 3rd, 1982. A duck farmer in Lincolnshire employs two people called Crow, four called Robins, a sparrow, a gosling, and a dicky bird. There are other varieties of the compulsion of the name, such as the Canadian goose that crashed through the window of a house in Derby while the occupant was listening to a record by Frankie Lane, Cry of the Wild Goose. The serious world of science, too, comes in for the prankster's ministrations. One thinks of noisy predictions by astronomers that have failed miserably, like the prediction of the comet Kohoutek. Never heard of that one. When it passed close to Earth in 1973, would be a spectacle. In the event, it could hardly be seen with the naked eye. The pranks continue. In April 1982, a New Zealand government department cancelled an earthquake alert when it was found that the ominous seismograph readings they were receiving from remote stations were caused by excited wallabies hopping nearby, and a famous American university had to admit, to its great embarrassment, that for over a decade no one had noticed that one of its dinosaur skeletons was wearing the wrong head. There is a dark side to the cosmic joker too. In the book of heroic failures, Stephen Powell tells the story of a farcical but tragic event that took place during the British firemen's strike of 1978. The Army took over responsibility for firefighting operations, and on January 14th, they rescued a cat that had been trapped up in a tree. The old lady who owned the cat was overjoyed and invited them all in for tea. But, says Stephen Powell, driving off later, with fond farewells completed, they ran over the cat and killed it. No. The victim of an improbable series of accidents, for example, can perhaps be forgiven for thinking he is the victim of a curse, or that someone up there doesn't like me. Most of us have just got enough paranoia to feel got at, usually when we are depressed, but the feeling passes and our sense of humor puts it into perspective. In paranoid schizophrenia, however, these feelings get out of hand. The yachtsman Donald Crowhurst, who ended his life tragically by drowning himself in 1969, had fallen into schizophrenia as his vessel drifted in mid-Atlantic. Shortly before his suicide, he began to write a cynical parable in his ship's log. He felt our lives are manipulated by cosmic tricksters called chess masters. He believed that the explanation of our troubles is that cosmic beings are playing games with us. A similar cynicism, but born of disillusionment rather than madness, has led to the conspiracy theory that human history, which holds that almost every civilization has been instigated and manipulated by powerful and insidious organizations, usually secret, of bankers, religions, cults, and secret societies. A space-age variation of this Eric von Daniken's now discredited theory that human evolution is the product of regular intervention by space-traveling aliens. In Andrija Perok's biography of Yuri Geller, Geller claims that the source of his psychokinetic power is a group of super beings deep in space that have similarly manipulated human development. If this is true, however, one has to smile at the thought that the best these godlike machines can do is bend our cutlery. A significant number of keen minds have recognized what American psychologist Dr. Jewel Eisenbud has called subtle ordering tendencies of dispositions hidden in the very warp and woof of the universe. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, whose ideas about the nature of the unconscious influenced Freud and Jung, that something more than mere physical casualty influences men's lives. He called it the subjective connection. The real significance of coincidences, he wrote in 1850, exists only in the relation to the individuals who experience them. To others involved in the event, people for whom it has no significance, it passes unnoticed into the background of everyday life. The world is indeed comic, wrote the master of Gothic horror, H.P. Lovecraft, but the joke is on mankind. The discussion of coincidences and their meaning has attracted the likes of Carl Gustav Jung, Paul Kammerer, a scientist who engaged in pioneering work on the inheritance of acquired characteristics, who committed suicide when the results of his research with midwife toads were alleged to be rigged. Arthur Koestler and Sir Alister Hardy, all of whom have concluded that the phenomena of coincidences are somehow beyond the usual chains of cause and effect in space and time. Some contemporary researchers go as far as to suggest that these synchronistic events, as Jung termed them, might actually be arranged in some mysterious way by the collective unconscious. In describing the subjective nature of synchronistic experiences, many writers have used the familiar simile of life being like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. No, sorry. It didn't say that. Of life being like a film or a play or a novel directed or written by some mysterious power. Science fiction writer Larry Niven has used the imagery of mankind as puppets in the hands of alien puppet masters in several of his books, including Ringworld. The real argument among those who explain life in this way is over the identity of the puppeteer, author or director, God, angels, demons, cosmic imps, conspirators, aliens, or ourselves. It is the last possibility that provides the most interesting debate. Writing in Psychic magazine in October 1975, Jewel Eisenbud encapsulated the proposition: theoretically, there is nothing that would be beyond accomplishment by the most innocent-looking observer. At most, he would be doing unconsciously and with no manifest effort what a movie director goes to great pains to do on a conscious level, that is, deploying props, natural surroundings and events, and the wide capabilities of central casting, with special effects as needed. Since all behavior on the part of the players would be rationalized, no one would be the wiser. We certainly control the reality of our dreams in this way. The stumbling block of applying this idea to real life, however, is the difficult problem of just how the fate of one individual invariably fits the fate of another, so that each is the hero of his own drama, while simultaneously figuring in a drama foreign to him. As Schopenhauer put it, "This is something that surprises our powers of comprehension." Whatever the identity of the cosmic joker, he is breathtakingly skillful at juggling with everything at once, and he still manages to be boundlessly creative and magnificently audacious. Here is another link with the subconscious mind. Action that is unerringly swift, perfectly timed and appropriate is the characteristic of that unselfishness state shared by the somnambulists and the hypnotized, martial artists and mediators, saints and sages, and incidentally, some children, maidmen, and drunks. They appear to have access to a primal, childlike, unconditioned state of mind, to the personal and collective unconsciousness that has been reached its perfect expression in Zen Buddhism, with its celebration of playful or cosmic spirit. All of the philosophies, Zen Buddhism may be of the most help to us in coming to terms with the cosmic joker, because it appears to have mastered the phenomenology of absurdity. In his analysis of Chinese philosophy, The Chinese Mind, from 1967, E.R. Hughes described Zen teachings as consciously and deliberately paradoxical, even with the intention of causing laughter, to make evident the incongruities of the human situation. What else can one say of a school of thought that numbers among its masters the eccentric Tang Yinfeng, who died standing on his head with the deliberate intention of turning conventional values upside down in the hopes that some people would take life less seriously. The difference between a healthy appreciation of a cosmic joke and the paranoid reaction is that the former recognizes its absurdity and delights in it, while the latter imbues it with a deadening seriousness. As M. Conrad Hires points out in Zen and the Cosmic Spirit, the child, the madman, the fool, and the sage share a common ground in which they transcend the limits on behavior and imagination accepted by the majority. The child has not yet learned to carve up the world into neat but arbitrary categories, nor is he governed by them. The madman cannot help himself as he confuses categories. The fool confuses categories deliberately, as do those great fools of art, the deistists and the surrealists, and the sage has gone beyond our need for categories, and thus returns to the childlike state. The Zen masters have always taught by exploiting the parallels between the instant in which we get the point of a joke and the sudden awakening of Satori, also enlightenment. Laughter is an explosive response to a situation that has suddenly been plunged into contradiction or reduced to absurdity, says Hires, and it is the abrupt relief of tension that takes us by surprise, precipitating laughter in the gating of a joke and of elimination. Whatever the ultimate origin of cosmic jokes, we certainly perceive them as an example of wit, and it seems reasonable to draw another parallel, this time between koans, the paradoxical riddles given to Zen students for meditation, and anomalous phenomena of any kind. The pranks of the cosmic joker, unexplained or inexplicable, like koans, challenge our presumptions and expectations, making us reflect on the mysteries of our existence. Ufology's leading scientist, the astronomer Dr. J. Allen Hynek, characterized the UFO problem with its parade of absurd entities and their even stranger behavior, preposterous names, and seemingly impossible craft of both shocking and paradoxical. This is, of course, an excellent description of a koan. Cosmic jokes are phenomenological riddles, specially formulated, perhaps by our collective unconscious, for the enlightenment and enjoyment of those with eyes and minds open wide enough to perceive them. It is an exquisite irony that something so universal should come from the trivial. As the great Zen master of the West, W.C. Fields, said, "It's a funny old world. You're lucky to get out of it alive." And there was a kind of a John Keel connection to all that too that I can't exactly remember right now, and I don't have time to research. So maybe there will be a part 2 of this one day about the cosmic joker. It kind of continues with our little synchronicity vibe that we've had going on here. One of the synchronicities I noticed was that Me and Kyle were talking about Cydonia last week, and in this book there's a picture of Cydonia, so that's kind of weird. But I want to go into the John Keel theory on the Cosmic Joker. I can't remember if he thought it was the Mothman who was the Cosmic Joker or Indrid Cold, but he said something about a Cosmic Joker, and I just can't put my finger on it right now. But that's all the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back here again next week. God bless you, and take care.